Destiny has often taken me away from my home in Latgali, the eastern part of Latvia, and brought me back. And yet no matter where I have been, Latgali has always been in the deepest corner of my heart. During my years of absence, I have often returned here in my thoughts, gaining ideas which time has only confirmed. One of these ideas has to do with the churches of Latgali, always crowded with people. Now I know clearly, Catholicism was the force which preserved Latgali for centuries. Small but strong, oppressed but unbreakable, dark but with an unquenchable yearning for light. Catholic Bishop Boleslavs Sloskāns had a long and complicated life. And yet he speaks with the same absolute conviction with which he believes that God is in heaven. Prayer on the Cross. A man from Latgali knows that he must love his fatherland with godly love, particularly if alien military mobs rampage across the land. Tsar Peter the Great conquered this small corner of land and attached it to Russia. The Latvian language, Catholic worship services banned, and yet families raised their children to be Catholics. The same was true when Boleslavs Sloskāns was born.
Mums jau Stirņienā gan ar vienu visizcilāko cilvēku ievērojamāju, ar Sloskanu veiskupu. Viņš Stirņienā ir dzimis un šī baznīceņā viņš ir kristējis.
In an ancient church book in Russian, we read: A boy came into this world on August 31, 1893 at Tilgali in the Stirnian parish. His father is Bernards and his mother is Cecilia. They have given him the name of Boleslavs. The child of the Sloskāns family was blessed by Saint Anthony, defender of children. Later in life, his destiny was difficult and complicated. But he never regretted anything. He bore his destiny until the last hour of his life. He always prayed to Mary, the Mother of God. Boļeslavs Sloskāns' mother was illiterate. His father worked the land, and despite the fact that he was a Catholic and a Latvian, he worked for the government. Bernards and Cecilia Sloskāns were devout people. Family prayers, Mass on Sunday. Liturgical demands, fasting, church traditions. 3 brothers and 2 sisters were raised in this environment from early childhood. They inherited their parents' religious convictions. Boleslavs plucked up his courage and told his father that he wished to become a priest. His father listened, raised his eyes to him and said yes. In 1911, Boleslavs set off for St. Petersburg. Several years later, at the St. Petersburg Cathedral, he was consecrated as a priest and sent to a spiritual academy for additional studies. Soon, the young priest had to abandon his studies because the academy was shut down. The October Revolution has occurred in Russia. Behind the smokescreen of separating church and state, the National Council of Commissars issued a decree on January 23, 1918, which launched an attack against religion, the faithful and the clergy. People fooled by the Bolsheviks raged with cynical hatred. They destroyed houses of worship and stole the belongings and antiques of the church. Sacristies were turned into grain warehouses. Many churches were completely destroyed. Many priests were arrested or mentally destroyed. The first attack led to the death of more than 8,000 priests and nuns, to say nothing of lay activists. More than one half of bishops were deported. Tens of thousands of churches were sacked and befouled. The church was seen as a remnant of the old regime. It was destined for utter destruction. Boleslavs Sloskans remained in Russia. With the support of his congregation, he continued his work of service before God. May 10, 1926. Moscow, the French Church of St. Ludwig. At the request of the Holy Father Pius XI, in complete secrecy, 32-year-old Boleslavs Sloskāns was consecrated as a bishop. He became apostolic administrator of the dioceses of Minsk and Mogilev. Near a century has passed now since the young bishop arrived in Belarusian territory. An image of the Bolshevik leader decorated the central square of Mogilev, but people were looking again for God. The first step was to restore the houses of worship, which had been so violently damaged. This church in Mogilev is one where Bishop Boleslavs Sloskāns once summoned the faithful for Holy Mass. On the edge of town, in a small wooden hut, we find a man who served the congregation of Bishop Sloskāns as a child, together with his mother. For decades, this man has collected photographs about the history of Mogilev. Someday, they will be turned over to the town's museum. The man has a special message of commemoration about the Latvian who served here and was beloved, Catholic Bishop Boleslavs Sloskāns.
Это был человек, который своим даже внешним видом внушал к себе уважение. А когда он стал еще говорить проповеди, чувствовался высокоэрудированный человек. Ну, понятно, что это еще вразрез с общегосударственной и партийной направленностью борьбы за построение безрелигиозного общества. Проповеди, очевидно, были с чисто религиозного содержания, ну, нравственное, так сказать, нравоучение, понимаете, все, вот. Ну и все это, видимо, подействовало, а потом эти всякие церемонии, понимаете, вот. Это все завоевало ему симпатию. Стало очень много народу проходить на его проповеди. Был такой случай. По улице пришли дети польской школы, и они вышли со строя и подошли к нему целовать руку. Ну, это уже был, понимаете, сногсшибательный факт для того времени. С пионеров многие повыходили, понимаете, вот. Вот это все, так сказать, вместе взятое, в конце концов, мы предложили выехать, как он, так сказать, иностранный подданный. Ну, он, так сказать, поскольку считал, что у него тут, понимаете, апостольская миссия, он отказался. Когда узнали, что расставали, так, понимаете, пошли на детство или на глупость. Вот. Взяли крест, 2 хоругви, вот, и пошли к этому зданию. ГПУ, отдайте нам нашего бископа. Ну, там его предложили выйти на балкон и успокоить народ. Он сказал, что это выяснится все, что он вернется к вечеру и все. Вот, понимаете. Но потом это все как-то уже пошло своим чередом.
Indeed, events proceeded. Bishop Boleslavs Sloskāns was arrested, interrogated and sent to Moscow. Without any evidence at all, he was convicted of military spying and sent to a concentration camp in Solovetsky for 3 years. We traveled in a prison wagon, so tightly packed that we could neither stand nor lie down. We arrived at Popov Island, near the town of Kena. The commanders of the camp received us with swearing and much vulgarity. One by one, we were taken into the barracks, so dirty, such a stench. Work began the next day. Soon we felt weakness and our extortion. Those words were written by the bishop in his diary. The islands of Solovetsky became a place of tragedy for hundreds of thousands of people. They were known as the Gulag archipelago. This was a concentration camp for members of the intelligentsia, clergymen, former military officers, later also farmers and working people. The Kremlin, built as an Orthodox cloister, turned into a horrific prison of suffering. Most prisoners lost their lives here. For many years, the brutality of the Solovetsky Islands was never disclosed in the Soviet Union. Archives were closed. Many of those who set up the camps had died. Few prisoners at the camps survived. Each attempt to discover the truth about the Gulag was seen as a threat against national security. The concentration camp at Solovetsky was the first of its kind, an experiment. Later, similar camps would cover the entire Soviet Union. Human life was of no value whatsoever. In later years, when the camps were shut down, all evidence of torment was carefully destroyed. But memories remain even at the Solovetsky Kremlin, which was returned to the faithful.
Над Соловецким монастырем пронеслось очень много различных невзгод, различных страшных историй, происходивших на Руси. И то, что произошло в советский период, это уже второе величайшее событие в истории Соловецкого монастыря. Если первое было Соловецкое стояние, то есть когда соловецкие монахи стояли за древнюю веру. И затем почти все монахи были наказаны, часть из них значительные были расселены в другие монастыри, сосланы, многие убиты. И второй период в истории Соловецкого монастыря – это лагерный период, когда почти вся страна была охвачена пятилетками безбожия. Период, когда смерч советской власти сносил все с лица земли. Все старое, все то, что могло противостоять убеждениям, верованиям и чаяниям того времени советским людям. За то, что назывались верующими, могли сразу же без суда и следствий предать смертной казни. И Соловецкий монастырь явился местом, где сосредоточились силы злобы в таком изощренном виде, в котором не было, может быть, нигде на материке.
A group of 13 priests was established to work on highway construction. We were given bread and salted fish and sent on our way. As the snow melted, many parts of the road were flooded with water up to our knees. Because I had no rubber boots, I wore felt boots. Water sloshed around in them, but I couldn't go barefoot because it was too cold. I caught cold, and that took away all of my strength. I so very much wanted just to lie down. I would have fallen asleep in the snow if my survival instinct had not kept me from doing so. Another entry in the bishop's diary. After a while, Bishop Boleslavs Sloskans was transferred to Answer Island. It was at a distance of some 20 kilometers from the Solovetsky Kremlin, 15 kilometers by land, 5 by sea. The sea was frozen. There were 20 people already in the punitive facility that had been installed at the Troitsky cloister. How difficult was life on the island? 1,000 prisoners in 1928, 700 died. Others replaced those who died. They died too. There was no room. There were parasites, dirt and hunger. Disease ravaged the camp, typhoid fever worst of all. Each day the prisoners were forced to do heavy work, 16 hours without any pause. Criminals were used as guards. There were serious and humiliating punishments for those who disobeyed. Sometimes prisoners were simply flung off a high nearby hill. How did Bishop Boleslavs Sloskans survive? What gave him the strength? We find answers in his diary. We thought about this difficult issue from the very start. Where and how could we celebrate Holy Mass? First we did it on the rock in the forest, but that was inconvenient and dangerous. Later we put up an altar made of several suitcases in the attic. On our knees, without any necessary movement so as not to hit the roof with our heads, we celebrated Holy Mass every day. we also heard one another's confession. There was great friendship and complete trust among us. We prayed at every available moment. We mostly prayed for those who were tormenting us, that God returned then humanity to them. After all, they were the most unfortunate ones of all. Prayers and faith in God gave us strength to survive without inheriting evil and hatred ourselves. Bishop Boleslavs Sloskāns amazingly survived to return to Mogilov to restart his mission. He was arrested again, sent to Siberia again. His path of sorrow was not yet finished. On January 22, 1933, Bishop Boleslavs Sloskāns returned to Latvia. At the Indra station on Latvia's border, he was greeted by Bishop Jāzeps Rancāns and representatives of Latvia's government. The ambassador to Latvia of the Holy See and hundreds of people were there to welcome him to Riga. With the support of the Latvian government and the Pope in Rome, the bishop was torn out of the claws of his tormentors. Bishop Boleslavs Sloskāns was traded for a Soviet spy who had been caught in Latvia.
Tēvs mūsu, kas esi debesīs, svētīts, lai top tavs vārds, lai atnāktu valstība tava vaļa, lai notiek kā debesīs, tā arī virs zemes. Mēs ikdienišku maizi dod mums šodien, atlaid mums mūsu parodus, kā mēs atlaižam savam parodniekiem. Neieved mums kārdinošanā, bet atpestī mums no ļauna. Amen.
Mother Vaivods was a servant at the Aglonas Basilica at the time. She remembers the bishop's return. She still has a rosary that was presented to her by Bishop Boleslavs Sloskāns.
Užu krūnes tā kā sirdis auglobāja. Viņš cieši laipnis bija tāds pazīmīgs. Vai cik vājas bija. Līgās, ka es viņi kaulini bija pijot tikai. Tā bijis. Un redzējām cīkši un mūcējuša bija. Viņš izvoka stostīt un Gulāna beidza stostīt. Es nevarēju izturēt, ka viņš man stostīja par savu dzīvi. Tālāk nestostīja, man tagad raudot vajadzēja.
When he returned, the bishop first went to his beloved Latgale. His mother, his brothers Vladislavs and Alberts, his sisters, they all lived in Istalne. Mama had lost her sight after weeping so much for the fate of her son. When she heard his greeting, however, she immediately recognized him. The bishop's father died 2 years before his return. He rests in the tiny cemetery right there in Istalne. For a very brief period of time, the bishop was with his own people. And then came the end of World War II. Together with other leaders of religious communities, he was ordered to leave Latvia. This time, to the west. Germany, then Belgium. He left behind his job as a professor of theology at the university and at a Catholic seminary. He left behind his work with young people. He left behind Latgale and his beloved ones. But he had his faith and the idea of coming back home.
Šie vārti 1946. gadā, 14. februārī, parādīja brīvību. Pār šiem vārtiem ienāca pilnie 4 latviešu nākošie priesteri, semināristi vai arī universitātes studenti. Pēc tam sekoja nākošie 5-6, atkal sekoja vairākas reizes. Un tā apmēram pēc gada no Vācijas atbrauc viņa ekscelences bīskaps Boleslavs Sloskāns. Kāpēc? Pāvests Pijus 12. Viņam uzdeva rūpēties par latviešu nākošiem semināristiem, nākošiem priesteriem.
Thus, Bishop Boleslavs Sloskāns began his life in Belgium.
Māsa Therefor strādāja tādā mājā, kur zina pārsisku biskaps Sloskāns dzīvoja. Viņa bija pirmā, kas saņēma biskaps Sloskāns 1947. gadā, kad viņš iebrauca Beļģijā. Was denkt ihr, Monsieur Sloskāns?
Vanavond is hij bij ons gekomen met de seminaristen allemaal. En we dachten, als ik monseigneur zeg, dat is een heilige mens. Zo mager, uitgemergelde en hij heeft een verstille man, een jaar, 1,5 jaar, bij ons geweest. Hè. En altijd heel sober gegeten.
Sister Therefor said, going to the garden of Regina Parse's house. After all of these years, there's still the bench on which the bishop would rest when he was taking a walk. But he had very little free time in Belgium. From the very first days, he returned to the work that he had done in Latvia, training future Latvian priests. In order to create study opportunities for the seminarians, the bishop demonstrated indescribable courage and relentlessness. He crisscrossed the country to find resources for their education. Everywhere he was received with kindness, and gradually the bishop found the necessary support.
Viņš teica, tu gribi kļūt priesteris? Jā, ekscelence. Un tad viņš sāka stāstīt par to priesterību. Kas ir priesteris? Tev būs daudz jāmācās, tev būs daudz jāstrādā, tev būs daudz no kā jāatsakās, lai tu kļūtu par labu priesteri. Bet tev būs visvairāk jālūdz, jāmācās lūgties. Lūgšanas garu. Viņš mēģināja jau pašajā pirmajā dienā man iedēstīt toreiz tādā paklīdušā no vācu nometnēm izsmukušā vai izbēgušā viena latviešu zēna, kāds es toreiz biju. Atceros, ka es jau savā muļķa prātienā domāju, ka es varēšu nabadzības tikumu izkopt un gerbties pēc iespējams vienkārši vai pat nabadzīgi. Un tad tas bija biskaps Sloskāns, kas mani atgrieza pie prāta, ka es dzīvoju Vācijā. Tu dzīvo Vācijā. Vācu tauta mīl savus priesterus labi gerbušies, jo parti tauta arī gerbjās labi. Ja tu aizbrauksi uz Āfriku, tu vari skraidīt, kā gribi puspliks. Ja tu atbrauksi uz Latviju, tev būs jāpiemēras Latvijas vidē. Un viņš tūlīt to piegrieza gerbies labi, vai ar tās rokas, parādi savas rokas, kopi savas rokas, ja tu savā laikā turēsi Jēzus Kristus miesus šīs rokās.
At first, there were more than 30 candidates at the Latvian seminary in Skilde. Some did not really feel the call and chose other professions. The bishop arranged for them to be able to study at a local Catholic university. Many became professors and doctors. The bishop moved to the university town to be nearer to them. Initially, he lived at one cloister, but then at a Benedictine cloister in the suburb of Kaisersberg. There he lived for the next 30 years, and from there he conducted all of his work. Was Bishop Boleslavs Sloskāns well known? Father Kazimierz Ručs was alongside him in Belgium for 20 years.
Lai uz to atbildētu, jāsaka, ka viņš visvairāk ir pazīstams šejienes Beļģu sabiedrībā. Bet viņš ir pazīstams arī katoļu aprindās, Francijā un it sevišķi Vācijā.
The bishop went everywhere where he was invited, and not just Latvian events in Belgium. He traveled to Germany, England, France, Sweden and Italy, always bringing along his spiritual and moral strength. Bishop Sloskāns often visited Rome, particularly after he was appointed apostolic moderator for émigré Latvians and Estonians. He and other Latvian bishops also took part in the Second Vatican Council. While in Rome, the bishop often attended private audiences with the Holy Father, who always welcomed him to the Vatican. Just as was the case during his first visit after he returned from the camps of the Gulag. He was presented with an ornate and historical cross and ring for the torments that he had suffered and for the faith that he had demonstrated in the church. In 1926, Boleslavs Sloskāns had chosen for his Bishop's Herald the book of Revelations with its 7 seals. Above it, he placed a sacrificial lamb, and underneath was his slogan, Hostia pro fratribus, the victim for his brothers. At the Kaisersberg's Abbey, the bishop could often be found in a private chapel, deep in prayer. His sufferings were turned into a particular manifestation of love for God and man. He continued to pray to the Mother of God, the Virgin Mary. That is how his contemporaries remember him.
Gada beigās, man bija knapi 3,5 gadiņi. Mēs ar tēvu pārcelāmies no nometnēm Vācijā uz Beļģiju, Briselē. Un tajā laikā mans tēvs šķīrās un palika viens pats ar manīm. Un Sloskāns, tieši biskāps Sloskāns, bija tas, kas īstenībā palīdzēja mums personīgi, sagādāja manu vienu vietu Beļģu internātā pie māsiņām, kur es varēju palikt. Tās reizes, kad mēs esam sastapušies, man viņš bija tik tūrs, tik mīļš, tā kā draugs un tā kā papiņš. Smaids, saulīt un siltums. Viņš cilvēks ar savām acīm un saviem darbiem gribēja apkamt, tā milzīgi liela mīlestība.
1949. gadā, kad es biju vēl students, un tad jau es arī devos laulībā. Un bīskaps Boleslavs Sloskāns arī mūs salauzāja. Un pēc tam jau tās saites bija daudz ciešākas. Un tik vienkārši viņš bija visā dzīvē. Bija vienreiz interesanta saruna. Andris bija ļoti dzīvs bērns. No tevis jau baznīcas kungs neiznāks. Tu pa daudz ir tāds kustīgs un tādu mums nevajag. Redz, paskalds. Jānīts varbūt ir tāda mierīgāka. No tevis nē.
Redziet, arī palainas Dievs aicina svētos rakstos jaunā derībā. Ir vieta visiem, un aicinājums nav kaut kas nopelnīts. Aicinājums ir Dieva dāvana, un cik es palainīgs biju, varbūt dzīves es biju. 5 gadu vecumā man prasīja, ko tu darīsi vēlāk. Ko tu darīsi? Un es atceros, ka es atbildēju tai dāmai, es vēlos būt kā bīskaps Sloskāns. Viņš nāca uz mājām un atstāja tādu ārkārtīgi laba cilvēka iespaidu. Viņš pie katra piestājās, uzlika roku, parunājās. Labestība izplūda no viņa.
When the bishop went to market every Friday to buy flowers for the chapel, he was dressed in ordinary garb, but he always wore his bishop's ring. People at the market knew the priest, as they called him. They talked about him. With his radiant spirituality, the simple priest from the countryside calmly and unnoticeably did his apostolic work. On November 7, 1979, while walking in the gardens of the Kaisersberg Abbey, the bishop fell and broke his left shoulder. He could no longer be left alone, and he was sent to a rehabilitation facility. Sister Agnes was there.
Ik herkende monseigneur niet meer. Monseigneur had een grote baard, een kalot, heel mager natuurlijk. Ik heb hem dan in zijn zetel gezet en zijn arm ondersteund, omdat hij arm gebroken was. In het begin heeft hij geconcelebreerd met pater Brouwen. Ja. En pater Brouwen was een pater Dominicaan die of almoezenier was van het Koninklijk Paleis van Laken. Ja. En dan die hem daar de mis. En dan die eerste mis dat hij gedaan heeft, dan schreeuwde hij. Ik heb nooit niet geweten, ik heb dikwijls gevraagd met monseigneur, waarom schreeuwde hij? Hij heeft nooit niet gezegd waarom.
The bishop's health gradually improved. He began to take his meals with others and he went to the chapel for evening prayer. Preparations were made for the 55th anniversary of his consecration. But God had other plans. Bishop Boļeslavs Sloskāns went to God on Good Friday. With everyone quietly singing Salve Regina, he was interred in the crypt of the Kaisersberg's Abbey. Many years later, the abbey would once again say farewell to Bishop Boleslavs Sloskāns, preparing his remains for the return home to Latvia.
Sloskāna atnākšana atkal mūsu mājās patiesībā nozīmē viņa pagodinājumu Tādēļ, ka viņš ir izturējis ļoti smagu dzīves ceļu un saglabājis savus kristīgos principus. Viņš atgriežas savējo vidū.
Wel, monseigneur Sloskāns was in België het symbool van het verzet tegen het communisme. En hij belichaamde dat wat, alhoewel wij in ons land een groot aantal letten aanwezig hadden, die trouwens ook onze gastvrijheid hebben genoten, maar hij was dan toch degene die persoonlijk dit verzet tegen het goddeloze communisme het meest personifieerde. De pers in mijn land heeft daar heel wat over geschreven. Daar in enkele woorden samengevat wat monseigneur Sloskāns betekende. Wij hadden hem graag bij ons, maar wij zijn nog blijer dat hij nu in zijn eigen vaderland terug is.
At the Kaisersberg Abbey, where the bishop spent many years of his life, people gathered together with him once again. They remembered the moments they had spent with him, and they blessed his return to his home country. The Virgin Mary protected him now, as she had always done. The Basilica of Aglona awaited the return of its bishop, Boleslavs Sloskāns. After years of exile, he finally came home to his Latvia, his Latgale, for all time. He rests at the Aglona Basilica. When Bishop Sloskans died, Pope John Paul II sent a telegram to Belgium to express fatherly compassion and to state his blessings. We remember Bishop Sloskans' work at the highest immigration council at the Vatican, he wrote. We grieve with you and eagerly pray for Bishop Boleslavs Sloskāns at the moment of his death. When John Paul visited Latvia, he met with all of Latvia's Catholic priests at St. Jacob's Cathedral, blessed them and talked to them about the power of prayer, which strengthens our spirit and opens our hearts to love. He spoke of the power of prayer, which sustained Bishop Boleslavs Sloskāns and his faith in God throughout his life. Prayer evens us out. The large and small, the high and the low, the rich and the poor. Before God, we are all alike. What a simple truth, and yet one which so few are able to observe. The Latvian nation will survive only as a nation of believers with a high sense of morality, which our nation has observed for centuries. Enemies do not destroy a nation. A nation destroys itself when morality declines. The wisdom of Bishop Boleslavs Sloskāns came from his union with God, and he never stopped nurturing that union. He blesses us on a path which each of us must walk within ourselves.